Hey guys, happy Friday. I hope you had a great week. Hope you have a great weekend. It's supposed to warm up here in Arkansas, get into the 50s, and next week into the 60s Fahrenheit. Looking forward to that because it's been cold. I'm ready to warm up. Yeah, a lot of stuff to cover. And thank you for being here tonight. This is the Ramsey Paul Show. We do the Ramsey Paul Show every day. Monday through Friday, but Friday we do it at in the evening at this time, 8 p.m. Central. Usually I do it in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I do it at 11 a.m. Central. So this is for people that sometimes work during the day. They can watch it live, and if you're watching live, thank you. I really appreciate it. You don't have to watch live. It's on YouTube, and you can watch it on YouTube or Rumble. And I'm also streaming right now on X. So I guess you can watch it on X. And there's a couple of ways you can interact with the show. There's super chats on YouTube. Rumble has rants. And there's a power chat feature here. And also a stream elements link in the description if you want to leave a tip. I do appreciate that. And Friday's a little special. Because what we do, and I'll cut and paste this in. We have you can call in and ask a question or have a comment. All I ask is, it's kind of like, let's like the Rush Limbaugh show or a show where you call in and ask your question. So just go, and everyone's been good, but just get in and get your question and then get off. It's not a round table. I do have a round table and where you guys can talk longer, but usually for this, just to make it interesting for other people, just be on point. And so there's a link there, and you don't have to use your camera if you don't want to. So I call it Open Call-In Friday. I get some people to call in. And let's see here. Maybe I'll send in case. Sometimes Sasha, she listens and she will call in too. So maybe she'll do that. Let me just see if she's going to do that here. Hang on here. I'm going to copy this over here. There we go. I don't know if she's probably busy working, but maybe she'll call in. All right. Okay. So we got a lot of stuff to cover. And I gotta bring up my Substack. I do an essay every day, Monday through Friday on Substack. Today I did a video, and it was just for my Substack members. Usually Monday through Thursday, I'm starting to get into a new routine how I do the content. And Monday through Thursday, I get up in the morning. I usually write an essay, and it's free. And I post it on Twitter. It's from Substack. So even if you don't want to financially support me, you can follow me on Substack and you'll get notified for that. Substack's a great tool. And I put like 80% of my content is free for everyone. So no reason not to follow me on there. But if you can, it's a $5 or $7. I think it's $7 on Substack. It's the default price they have. And, this less than the price of a fast food dinner anymore. I really do appreciate it. And I do exclusive content. Like every Friday, I do it for the subscribers. I either do a video or an essay. And every Tuesday, we have a round table. And those are for people that subscribe on Substack. Now, I'm still on Gumroad and Group App, but I'm slowly migrating off. Actually, by the end of February, I will be migrated off, and I'm just going to focus on Substack because it's more robust tool and works better. And if you want to follow me on Substack, you're like, where do I go? I'm Ramsey Paul, but I'll put it in the description here so you guys can just hop on and sign up. And again, it doesn't cost. If you just want the free stuff, there's no reason not to sign up. It's free. And also, if you can, sign up. Sub to me on YouTube and Rumble and follow me on X. I'm pretty active on X. I haven't been as active as I used to be, but I try to post some. That's where I get most of my news, and that's what we discuss. I like the platform. And so follow me there too. It's free to follow me and I appreciate it. So yeah, it's been a crazy week. A lot of stuff happening with Trump and in the news. So we'll go over a couple of things right here. And someone asked, what's going on with all these planes that are crashing? And we just had another plane crash today. Although this wasn't a commercial airliner. I think this was just a small plane. 2 people, I believe.
Yeah, man.
This is a guy in, I guess, a door, cam, and he's just walking out of the door, and watch behind him. You can see behind him a plane's going down. Boom! Could you imagine seeing that? That's what. Oh, it's a Ring camera. That's got to be terrifying, horrific. Yeah, wow. Obviously, this just happened. We don't know why that happened. This isn't a plane crashing in the city is pretty unusual, but small planes going down, it's not super uncommon. But we'll have to see if there's any similarities to the commercial airline that went down. Let's see here. Here we go. I got one here from Ryan. Just sub today and honestly worth more than the $8 a month. Good deal. Another plane crashed in Philly earlier. Wondering if they'll keep blaming Trump. Yeah, it's so ridiculous. They're trying to blame Trump. He's been in office less than 2 weeks. And thank you for the shout out. Again, it's really amazing getting back to the money because, you spend all this money on, I'm the same way. It's like when I'm paying for gas, if it's like a nickel more, I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'll go over to this gas station. But you go to fast food and it's basically like $10, at least where I live, just for, fast food. And you consider that cheap. So it is a good deal. Thank you. Yeah, they're blaming Trump, but how could you blame him? He just got into office. And we don't know the specifics of this plane crash. Again, it wasn't a commercial airline. So I don't put as much weight into it as, was there an air traffic controller? Was there a DEI mess up or the pilot? I don't know. We'll have to see. It could be mechanical. I'm not really sure. It's not, I don't think, as a big to-do as the one that happened in Washington, D.C. Because what happened in Washington, D.C., we're still trying to get the details. But President Trump said it was DEI related or something to do with that. And there's a lot of suspicious things about the crash in Washington, D.C. We will cover that. It's too early what's happened in Philadelphia. The probable explanation is just a small plane went down. That happens at times. It's sad, but it's not as unusual as a helicopter, an Apache helicopter colliding into another plane is almost unheard of because the pilots, they're well trained. The modern aircraft, especially commercial planes, are very safe, and they have collision detection. If you've ever got a new car, ridden in a new car, even in cars, there's collision detection now where lights will go on, or you may have assisted braking. You put it into reverse now. I'm old enough, you had to look in the rear view mirror. Now you have a back camera and it beeps if it gets too close to something. So it's nice. Well, planes have similar features. And if they get too close to another aircraft, it gives a warning and says, pull up, or down, or whatever. And so there's a lot of safety mechanisms there. And over airports, they have set rules. Like, I guess a helicopter around a major airport is not allowed to fly above 200 feet. And this, for whatever reason, the helicopter did. So it looks like the military helicopter was at fault. I don't think the American Airlines plane or the pilot was at fault. He was cleared to land and the helicopter hit him. I don't think he hit the helicopter. So it could be a pilot error, or it could be a control tower issue, could be a combination of both, or, and I'm just throwing this out there, initially I dismiss this, but I would say a 10% chance maybe this was deliberate. Maybe the pilot deliberately hit another plane as an act of terrorism. And we'll discuss that. And again, I don't know. I'm not saying that's the case. And I'm saying 90% is probably not the case. But just because just the odd situation of how the helicopter, and again, these were pretty, there was 3 people in the helicopter, 2 men and a woman, and I put woman in quotes because I don't know what we mean by woman anymore. Typically, you had the heritage women, you know how they are, but now you have this new type of women that tend to be common in the military under Biden that have a penis and something. So it's very suspicious what's happening there. And we'll get into that. So yeah, that is pretty crazy. And maybe I'll get into this right now, since this is what I'm talking about. And they asked Trump about the investigation into the plane crash in D.C., and was his
commentary about Mr. President on the crash. Do you have any concerns that your commentary about things you have described as common sense or your observations could in any way interfere with the thorough investigation of the crash?
No.
Yeah, Trump knows more than we do. For some reason, they're hiding the identity of the woman. I don't know why. Supposedly the family doesn't want her identity released, which is very strange. Why wouldn't they? So there's something odd. And if you put the pieces together, the woman, I think, was responsible probably for the crash. Maybe the air traffic controllers too. They weren't staffed properly. And again, that has nothing to do with Trump. That was pre-Biden. In fact, the air traffic controllers, they have been refusing to hire white men. They have. It's been the DEI thing. They wanted to replace white men with minorities, qualified or not. So I'm not surprised something like this may happen. There's been a lot of near misses, and I'm not surprised that this would happen too. So I got 009 calling in, but let me just finish this clip here first.
Oh, I think they'll do an investigation. It'll probably come out the way I said it. I like to put it up front. I'm so tired of listening to things happen to our country, and then people say we'll do an investigation, and 3 years later they come out with a report that nobody looks at. Especially, not in all cases can you do that, but in this case, you had a helicopter the Black Hawk was too high.
So Trump is saying that the Black Hawk was too high. And Trump, obviously, he gets the national security briefings from the military. So we're almost certain the helicopter, for whatever reason, was at fault, not the airline. Maybe the controllers were too, the air traffic controllers, but definitely the helicopter pilots were in error.
It was above the 200 limit by double. Shouldn't have been there. And there were some other mistakes made too, and I pointed them out also, and I was right on all of it, but they'll still do an investigation just to check it out.
So yeah, I think it's good.
Mr. President.
I think it's good that Trump is being transparent and letting us know right away, so that's good news. Hey, 009, welcome to the RAMZPAUL Show. It's good to see you. What's on your mind?
I had a quick question.
Yes.
Why do you think Amelia Earhart crashed the airplane? And do you think there were any lessons that could have been learned from that?
Yeah, good question. I think she got lost and they ran out of fuel and they had to ditch the plane. There's some speculation that she ended up as a Japanese POW or whatever, but I think they got lost. She had a guy with her helping her fly the plane, but navigation back then was a lot more difficult. They didn't have all this GPS and stuff, and I think they got lost and they ran out of fuel and they crashed. That's probably the most likely thing that happened. Now, if it's because she's a woman or not, well, this happened to men too. I know, and that could be. but to be fair, it's happened to male pilots that previously back in those days you get lost. And part of it though, she was symbolic and she probably got in over her head. And so this crash that happened in Washington, D.C., from what we've known so far, and they're keeping it very suspiciously quiet. They're trying to hide something, and I don't know why. But thank you for calling in. If you guys want to call in, I got the link below. In fact, I'll post the link again. Feel free to call in. I think the woman, she had like 500 hours, but there's two other guys with her, and so the question is, they weren't just a little bit off. As Trump said, you're supposed to be 200 feet or lower if you're in a helicopter. I didn't know that, but that's the world. They should have all known that. And there was warning. The tower warned him, like, okay, about the plane, but they ignored the warning. And it could be because of incompetence and error. Maybe the woman was there and because the military under Biden was trying to put women in these positions and she really wasn't competent. But then why didn't the other men tell her, hey, you're going too high? Or maybe they were busy. I don't know. We're going to figure this out. Or another possibility, and I hope this is not the case, it was deliberate. And if maybe she's not really what we think of as a woman, but the new definition of a woman, if you know what you get my drift. And she was very upset with Trump and the whole feeling persecuted thing. And I'm not saying that happened, but you gotta think that is at least a small possibility. I'm not ruling that out. And I think it's probably 90% just incompetence. But there's a 10% chance I wouldn't be surprised if it was deliberate. Some of these people, of that group, they tend to commit suicide a lot. Maybe he or she or whatever it is wanted to make a statement because remember Trump was purging transgenders from the military. So, but we don't know. I'm not saying that's the case, but it wouldn't surprise me. But again, I'm not saying that's the likely case. Speaking of suspicious and quiet, reminds me of TWA 800 when it was shot down off the coast of Long Island in 1996, and the FBI covered things up. Yeah, that is, and you probably know me, watched me for a while. I'm not like the big conspiracy theorist with everything, unless things aren't adding up. All right. So I'm not one of these guys that thinks, oh, the world is secretly flat and there's aliens in Antarctica. And I'm not that guy. I've never been that guy. It's like, yeah, no. So, but there are cover-ups. We know that the government has lied to us. We do know that. And that incident back in 1996, yeah, I think missiles shot it down. And it was something strange that happened. Maybe the FBI were working with terrorists. They sometimes supply weapons. And we know that happened with the World Trade Center before the 9/11 bombings in the 90s. The FBI accidentally gave a terrorist group real bomb, some Islamic group, and they set off a car bomb under the World Trade Center. I mean, it didn't bring the Trade Center down, but so that was because people saw the missile flying. And I think that was a cover up. I really do. That's a good point. I hope with Trump, they won't cover this up once this gets out. And I just need to know what happened and because part of this is how can you prevent this from happening again? And if she was flying the plane, why did she make such a horrendous mistake when, it's double the height she was supposed to be? Was she not properly trained? Did she panic? Was she put in that position, as Trump alluded to, because of DEI, and there were competent men that would have loved to have been a helicopter pilot that were tested better than her, but they were like, no, we don't want more white men. We want a woman. That could be. There's a lot of things here that we need to figure out and get away from this. But yeah, DEI, and again, it's not just me, RAMZPAUL, conspiracy theorist. Trump, once he heard the information, he said it was DEI related. So and I don't think he was just talking off the cuff. I think he knows what really happened. And he could say more, but they're kind of keeping it quiet for now. But you can kind of put this together. Kind of put it, you could put Trump's statements together. You can read between the lines what's happening. And I do support Trump that he's going to be transparent and get this out quicker. As he said, you don't want to just push this under the rug and then 3 years later do some report no one reads. We need to understand what's happening now so this doesn't happen again. And you may have to change the training. You might have to change the procedures, the policies. You might have to change, like, who do you have as helicopter pilots? And I said, I initially was somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but it's not really. I think the public sector, the military, but even the private sector, as we've seen the damage DEI has done over the years, where we put unqualified people in these positions because there's been a certain group of people that has wanted to eliminate whiteness. And because of this, we're having a lot of issues. We need to go back and review all these positions and see, like, hey, is this doctor really qualified, or did she get, pass her, did she get pushed through even though she's not qualified? And that could mean life and death too. And the military in this case has to look at, well, did this woman, was she there because she really earned it? Or was it because we want girl boss? It's like a Hollywood movie. And we have these sassy girl bosses that do it better than any man can do. Remember in Star Wars, Rey, she's not like Luke Skywalker that has to train and learn and it's difficult. No, she's girl power. And do they really buy into that bullshit? Because in general, women don't react as well, in general, to stress as men do. And that could be a stressful situation. Although it wasn't bad weather. It was night, and it's a busy air corridor, but that's not unusual. So they need to look at that. Or do they have other women pilots? If that was the case, they need to review. Are they there? Were they put in these positions over more qualified men? And if the answer is yes, you got to say, sorry, sweetheart, you're being pulled from this assignment, and we're going to, place a man in this position because we can't. It wiped out how many people? 60 people or something, a whole figure ice skating team and some young kids. It's horrible. It really is. And so diversity kills. It really does kill. And we need to stop that. So hopefully we will get it into answers quickly. And let me just show you how this is happening here. And this is, again, if you read between the lines here, this is the identity of the female pilot who flew the Black Hawk into a plane. Army already acknowledged she was in command of the flight. So delaying just fuels questions about DEI or even an intentional crash. So again, there's 3 crew members on the Apache crew, and there was 2 white guys. Presumably they were straight. This guy has a child, so I think they both kind of look straight to me. And then there's a woman, and for some reason they're keeping her identity secret. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why are they keeping her secret? And I think the reason they're keeping it secret, I'm just thinking, what could be one of the reasons they're doing this is because they don't want people to look up her social media, like her Facebook, and see things about her. Like, number one, is she a real woman or not? And what are her politics? Because that could point to someone that's disgruntled and committed a terrorist attack. Again, I'm not saying that's what happened, but this is looking very suspicious. Usually they would just show all 3, the brave men and women. They did nothing wrong. It was a mechanical failure or air traffic controls screwed up. So we want to honor these people. They wouldn't be trying to cover this up and hide the identity of the woman. So this is, thank God that Trump is in, because he has no tolerance for the DEI. Hopefully we'll get at the truth. If Kamala was president, they would have definitely covered this up and hid the reason what caused this. So hopefully we get the truth what caused this. But we have a right to know because this is a security issue. Who is involved and what are the situations here? And Matt Walsh commented on this too. And the military is withholding the name of the female helicopter pilot. This is totally unacceptable. That is. And the only reason I think they're doing it is because they don't want us to look at her social media. She, and if it's she, I don't know. Maybe it's a real woman. Maybe it's not. I don't know. The military, by the way, just as backing up the whole transgender issue, they had a higher than normal transgender amount of people in there because part of the reason people that wanted a free sex change operation, they would join the army. And if you remember back under Obama and even Biden, they were really targeting their recruitment ads to homosexuals and part of the LGBTQ alliance. I remember I did a video about a recruitment ad that the Army did. It was about Emily. Let's hear the story about Emily. She was raised by two mothers, and she liked to march for social justice and gay pride parades. I mean, just really degenerate shit. And obviously that reduced the recruitment for straight white men or even any man. You know, they don't want to be part of that. And they saw the huge issue they had. But for a while, they were really targeting these people. And part of, I think, trying to get people to sign on is, hey, if you join the military, we will pay, meaning the taxpayers will pay for your sex change. And so that's why we got an overrepresentation of these people in the military. Trump's trying to correct that. And again, I don't know, this could be a legitimate woman. We just don't know. And this is what happened when you don't have openness and the government has lied to us so much and they're trying to cover this up. There's these questions. And then there's like, well, why would they hide this? What was she saying? The helicopter was involved in and may have actually caused one of the worst airline disasters in American history. We have the right to know their names. Yes, we do. We have a right to know the names, and we have a right to get to the bottom of really what's happening here. Again, everyone that died in the American Airlines flight, we know their names. And the two other pilots, we know their names. So trying to hide this woman who was involved and may be responsible for the disaster is not doing anyone any favors. We need to get to the truth of what happened. And maybe she wasn't responsible for it. Maybe she had nothing to do with it. Then that needs to come out too. But trying to hide this under the rug just looks like a cover-up. There's certain actions that just make you look guilty, right? And this is making her look guilty, just this how they're trying to hide this here. And so we will see, and I think Trump will release it soon, and they're trying to probably determine how to present this. And Trump has given so many clues, like the helicopter was too high, and he talked about a DEI problem. And if you put the pieces together and they're hiding her identity, it's starting to point into a certain direction. I think now they're just trying to look at, was it just incompetence or was it an act of terrorism and mass murder? Because maybe she, had a grudge against Trump. We don't know. That's all speculation, but that's something that needs to be looked at. Maybe she could just be an old-fashioned woman that has a vagina. There's some of those still around, but we don't know for sure here. All right. The gender ideology, Trump has really come at hard, and I think this has been a really good thing. And, I got another super chat here. Let's see here. Ryan, already got that one. Donald Joy. Hey, Donald, thank you. The Black Hawk pilot was not the pilot. She is alive. That was a hoax. Yeah. Earlier in the day, they identified some person that they claimed was the pilot that wasn't the pilot. And I never used that person's name, and I'm not going to say their name here. So there was a woman pilot, but the woman pilot that was rumored to be the pilot allegedly was a trans woman. He was not in that crew. That was false news. So I just want to be clear on that. And again, I never said that person's name until I have confirmation. I don't use people's names. So we do know it was a woman. We don't know if it was like a real woman or a trans woman. We don't know that. We do know that Trump says this was the DEI was responsible. We do know that. We do know the helicopter was flying too high. We do know they're hiding the identity of the woman. But the initial woman that was reported on X that was a trans, that person wasn't on the helicopter. So thanks for clearing that up. So yeah, that's key. And so I'm always trying to be careful too when there's something like this, you have the right names. I'm laughing because whenever there's a mass shooting, people make a joke about Sam Hyde, and sometimes even journalists fall for it or politicians. So yeah, I always try to be careful, especially with the names. So we don't have the name of the woman that was on the crew, and we don't know if she was a real woman or trans. So we'll find that out. And we don't know if it was an accident or incompetence or intentional terrorism. Louis Barrow here. Thank you, Louis Barrow. Power chat. Do you think it was a Muslim woman who went Allah Akbar? I don't know. I mean, it could be. I don't think so. I would be surprised. I think if I had I think there's a good chance that it is a trans woman, but I don't know for sure. And if it is that, because you're still a man, and you still have the space, just because you have a sex change doesn't change your brain. You still have the spatial awareness that men have that is better than women. Men and women are different. And did you know, and this is scientific, I didn't even realize this, women can see more colors than men. It is true. That's Google it. It's a weird thing. So I wonder how women see the world, but everything is like more colorful to them. But men have better spatial recognition. This old joke about parallel parking, women have a hard time doing that. It's based on the truth. And same with pilots and stuff. They have a lot of troubles in 3D space. But if you're trans, you're still a man. Your brain is. So you don't have that issue. So it could have been intentional. But again, we don't know. We don't know. It's suspicious, let's just say that. And hopefully they'll make this more, just get the truth out, whatever it is. Maybe it was just a normal woman that had nothing to do with it. That could be true too. But then I don't know why they're hiding it. All right, let's go through some of the gender ideology. Trump is really going hard on this. And this is really good. And one of the distinctions that Trump has made, which I've always said, is really weird. It's like stuff I've said for years. I'm seeing like my words repeated in the government. And I'm not saying they listen to me, but it is interesting how we can influence the culture and it gets to the highest levels, like J.D. Vance, and he influences people. We're more connected than you guys know. And what we do does make a difference, even though, you don't get necessarily rich or famous over it, but our community, we can help influence the world, and we're really doing it. So it feels really good. Like when I saw Ron DeSantis making fun of the undocumented immigrant, he goes, that just sounds like you lost your documentation. And I laugh because I've always made that kind of joke. And he's making it now. And now Trump is getting involved, and they're distinguishing between gender and sex. They're two different things. Sex is something you're born with. It's biological. Gender, living things don't have a gender. Nouns have a gender. Like the noun bull, that's a male gender. It means a male cow. Not all nouns have a gender. Some are indeterminate or some are neutral. But living things don't have a gender, they have a sex, typically male or female. Some primitive creatures like a earthworm, they're not male or female, but that's another category. But higher living creatures, they're male or female. That's just how God or evolution made us. And so that's important. Part of the problem that we got into this mess is people came up with this gender theory that people have a gender. And it was quasi-religious. Technically, it's a form of Gnosticism. I did videos about that. I have a book about how Gnosticism really influenced a lot of our thinking. It's kind of theoretical, highbrow, intellectual book, but it's really true, because most of these people that are into all this gender queer theory, they don't know what Gnosticism means. They don't understand how it was a Christian heresy that considered the material world to be evil, but it really separated everything. Whereas the standard Christian viewpoint is you can't be born in a wrong body. You are your body. Yeah, you have a soul within your body, but they're integrated, right? It doesn't hop around. And so people saying that, oh, they were born in the wrong body, that's just nonsense. It's a mystical phrase. But that's where they came up with this idea of gender theory. And then you could have, it's just not male or female. Well, at first they just started male and female, but you could have a crazy mix up and you could be assigned the wrong gender at birth. But you're not assigned a gender. You don't have a gender. You have a sex, and you're not assigned a sex. You're given a sex on conception. And you could say God does it or nature does it, but it's when the sperm fertilizes the egg, how the chromosomes line up, you get either a male or a female. I think males are XY, right? Females XX. This is basic biology people should have in junior high. But they got this crazy mystical thing that you could, have this mystical spirit and be in the wrong body. And it's just silly. And then they came up with I don't know, 100 genders. I'm two spirit, or I'm a something queer gender. Just made up all these bullshits. So Trump has ordered a memorandum that effectively eliminates gender ideology from the federal government. Gender ideology was one of the most satanic, evil things I've ever seen in my life. It ended up doing horrific sexual mutilation to little children through propaganda, horrific stuff I don't even like to talk about. So by 5 p.m. today, so already this goes into effects, they're going to terminate any contracts, programs, or grants that include gender ideology. Any employee's job who involves gender ideology must be placed on leave. Removes all websites and social media accounts that promote gender ideology. And here's the big one. Terminate email systems with a pronoun prompt. And Trump said, if you're for the federal government, you have to put your silly pronouns, his, him, or they, them. It's like, no, we're not doing that. See, you're either his or him, or she or her. You're not a they, them. You don't have demons in you. They is plural. So you're not a they, right? Maybe if you're like that two-headed girl, maybe you'd be a they. But otherwise, you're singular, right? So let's don't butcher the language. Let's see here. All forms should only give options for male and female. This is good. I don't know if you guys, I used to have to go when I went to the doctor a year ago or 2 years ago. Nothing was wrong with me, just a physical. And they had beat me, you checked in like, which gender are you? And they had like 2 spirit, 3 spirit, non-binary. And now I'll go up to them and say, this is bullshit. We don't do this anymore. Please correct this. I'm not doing this. Replace the word gender with sex on all documents. That is key. That is key. I've been arguing that until I'm blue in the face. I almost gave up on this because I figure, hey, I'm from the past. No one understands the difference between gender and sex anymore. We used to be taught this. They don't teach this stuff in school anymore. They teach like oral sex, anal sex. But back in the day, we actually diagram sentences. You guys ever do that with the lines and stuff? Here's the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives. And then the nouns, they could have various genders, right? But no, they don't do that anymore. Now they have this idea of, you could be a robin trapped in a human body. Intimate spaces should be based on sex, not gender identity. So that means men need to be in the men's restroom and women in the women's restroom or showers or whatever. We don't need to mix it, and we don't need whatever you think you are, it doesn't really matter. You are something, and what you think you are doesn't change that. So this is huge. It's better than I ever thought would happen. And they're using the language properly with sex and gender. And that's key. Fighting the language is important. It's like it's not an undocumented immigrant, it's an illegal alien. It's not gender affirming care, it's a sex change. It's important we use the right terminology. You don't have a gender, you have a sex, male or female. And that is really, really cool. And this is more, oh darn it, I closed the tab again. This is bigger than I think a lot of people realize. It's important that we call things, it's important for truth that we say things like they are. That is the key thing. All right, and let me just see here. Sometimes I boomer, I close the tab and, here it is. This is what I wanted to talk to you about. I mentioned breaking. Employees at multiple federal agencies were ordered to remove pronouns from their email signatures by 5 p.m. today. This is key. And this is also not just at the federal government. This will help state governments to grow a spine and resist this tyranny, this craziness, this demonic possession bullshit. And even sadly, Republicans have been weak in this area. My former governor here in Arkansas was a guy named Asa Hutchinson. Remember Asa? He thought he was going to run for president. He would have a rally and 3 people would show up. But he was a governor of Arkansas. And he was okay during COVID. I will give him that. He didn't lock things down. But he got into this whole gender craziness that it was okay to do sex changes on children as long as the parents consent. And it's like, no, we don't allow parents to consent for a child to drink alcohol or to get a tattoo. Parents are not allowed to consent to mutilate their children. We don't allow that. The state should not allow that. But Asa Hutchinson, he actually signed that bill. Now, thankfully, we have a pretty base legislature in Arkansas, pretty conservative, and they overrode him. But that piece of shit, Asa Hutchinson, supposedly a Christian, he's not. How can you be a Christian when you support mutilating children? This is how they were. Now we have, because of Trump, it's going to give an example to other states like Florida and Arkansas and other places are going to follow suit. Say, no, if you're doing now state business, you don't put fucking they, them, or zer, or whatever bullshit. You use he or she. And that's how it should be. And I wanted to go back when you do directions. You don't say he or she does this. You just say he, right? You don't say she. You say he. That's what it defaults to. I want to go back to that way. But this is a good first step. So this is going to help state governments. They could get the spine and start to eliminate this. Then you'll start to see businesses start to end this bullshit. And already, it's sort of like deportations. You get people to self-deport. We're seeing that. You're getting people to just quietly in the middle of the night get rid of their pronouns on their email. What used to be a big virtue signaling, it's going to be an embarrassing thing. They're going to pretend they never did. It's kind of like the whole COVID thing. They used to have the icons with their mask on. Remember, they just loved that. And they just quietly removed all that. So I think we're going to see that. And even in corporations, I encourage you guys, if you run into this at your work, I mean, be respectful, but push back on it. Say, hey, the president's not doing this. We're not doing this. You don't have a gender. This is ridiculous. I'm not putting a pronoun on here. This is dumb. And if you're a dude, I don't care if you're a dude that wears a dress. I'm still calling you he. I don't give a fuck what gender you come up with or what pronouns you're a he. I'm not going to bastardize the language. Because of your mental illness or your demonic possession, I'll pray for you, but I'm not going to lie about your identity. So this is key and could start to go into the private sector. And I will definitely, if I go back to the doctor ever and they do this, I'll say, no, you need to change this. I'm not going to play this game anymore. And now you have the weight of the United States government behind you. And I think there's going to be not much resistance to this nonsense anymore. So as of tonight, as of 5 p.m. tonight, all federal employees have to remove their pronouns from their email. And it's really glorious to see what we're having. It's almost like they called it, remember, denazification after Nazi Germany fell. There's a whole program to try to scrub all references to Nazism. And you saw that sometimes with communists. Well, we're seeing this now with de-wokeification. Hey, I got a generous super chat. Love the show, man. Glad you're back to the regular streams. Thank you. Yeah, I've enjoyed my streams. I decided to go back to the regular, except Friday. Fridays are going to be at night. And I give, because there's some people who can't do it during the day. So, and I like Friday nights, just kind of chill. Stash is working, so what the heck, I could do this. It looks like the phase one of the Trump era is giving the base morale, and it's working. I was so blackpilled, and these symbolic wins have changed my whole paradigm. Yeah, I was very skeptical. I thought it'd be like the first administration of Trump. I think Trump in the first administration came in sort of naive. He was never in government. He didn't understand how the deep state worked. He didn't understand this all. I really don't. I don't think he was a bad guy back then. He was just naive, and he wanted to be friends with everyone. This time, he's coming in with a different attitude. He's not trying to be Mr. Nice Guy now. I think being shot, I almost said almost shot. He was actually shot in the head. Remember, here's part of your head. He was shot. That changed his life. He said so, and he doesn't care now. He knows that he's near the end of his life. He's healthy and he's mentally alert, but he's near 80. So, I mean, you get up that age, every moment counts, and he's making it count now, which you should do at any age, by the way, even whatever age you are now, make every moment count. But Trump is really doing that. And he's exceeded my expectations. I don't think he's going to slow down. I think he's playing for keeps. And I don't think he's bullshitting about things. When he says something, he really means it. But, we used to think, oh, it's just Trump being Trump, saying crazy stuff like about Greenland or Canada or Panama. No, I think he really means it. And for good or ill, he means it. And so he's not playing games. So if he sees there's a DEI problem, he's getting rid of it. He's not playing games with it. He's not forming a committee. And I think this is the leadership we need. And I'm so happy that we voted for him. I'm going to be better now. I'm not going to say who, but there's certain figures in our sphere that were actually promoting Kamala, of all people. What a disaster. So thank God that he beat Kamala and their little schemes to try to get Kamala in because they were unhappy with J.D. Vance because he wears eyeliner. He's a weirdo. That didn't happen. Right? Just thank God that didn't happen. All right. Oh, let me just show you here about this de-wokiness. Let me just bring this up here. I get all these tabs open and I get confused where everything is. Then I close the wrong tab. Whenever I do a stream with Sashi, she's like, oh my God, how do you keep track of all your tabs open? All right. And here we are. This is at the FBI Academy. And this was submitted by the New York Times. Someone took it. They had this whole propaganda posters up pushing wokeness that, is very similar to what you see under communism. And when communism fell, they tore down the statues like in Hungary. I actually went to where they pulled all the old communist statues when I visited Hungary. It's fascinating. It's like a statue graveyard, the huge statues. But now this is happening. We're tearing down, painting over all this woke propaganda. It is so good to see. It is so white pilling. I am so happy about that. And it is so cool. So let me just see here. I want to tonight. I've already had one caller, and let me put this out here for you guys again in case you want to call in. And you call in, just do a quick question. And like 009 had a great quick question. You don't have to use your camera. He uses camera. When you use Stream Yard, you can just hide the camera, so you don't have to show your face if you're worried about that. Or just send in a super chat, power chat. I appreciate those. All right, let's just see what else is here. So that is good to see here. Okay. Get to my next story here. This is one of the key things Trump has done to kill the deep state and these evil organizations is he's cutting off the money. And Z-Man notices too, and I've noticed this ever since January 20th and Trump got in. You don't see as many pro-Ukrainian propaganda on X. And that leads us to believe, and a lot of people believe, a lot of these people were just being paid. They're propagandists. And that does happen. The FBI and the CIA and stuff, they have used bots to get on X or Twitter to try to influence public opinion. They also go on 4chan. And it's a real thing they do because they understand that people tend to follow the herd. So if they can try to make something popular like the Ukrainian war, they can get people on board. And it looks like a lot of that was fake. It was just the CIA or FBI, they got funding. And how a lot of this works is, and this is just the illegal immigration, but it's more than just illegal immigration. It's also the whole woke deep state shit. But when it comes to illegal immigration, these NGOs, and thank God Trump paused the funding for 90 days to really look at what these organizations are doing, because a lot of these organizations, they're quasi-government. And we had a weird situation. It was like a circle where the government would give funding to some shit lib organization, NGO that has a nice name, like Catholic Charities here. You think, people, a lot of people are Catholics. I'm not, but a lot are. Oh, this is give money to Catholic charities. They're helping poor people. They're helping people, the saving grace of Jesus Christ. No. They're using that to try to replace you. Same with United Way, American Red Cross. Sadly, American Red Cross has always been a little controversial. In November of 1944, there was rumors that the Allies were running propaganda that they were using Auschwitz as a death camp. And the Red Cross went there in November of 1944 and said, no, that's not happening. So see, they were even corrupt back then because we know it was happening. But the Red Cross, Lutherans, so Lutherans are involved with this. The Hebrew, so Jews are involved. Global Refugee Jewish Family Services. So these groups, these NGOs that get government money, and then they use that money to pay off politicians and influence the news cycle. And for example, when it came to like Ukraine, we would pay for like the Institute, the Study of War, they're neocons, and they would fund media in Ukraine. They'd tell them what stories to give, and that media then would be referenced by our media to try to explain what's happening. It was all lies. And so this is cutting off the head of the snake by cutting off the funding to these evil organizations. So thank God that Trump is doing that. I think that has been very effective. And they're screaming like bitches, so you know it's hurting. And this is great. And I like Trump's new press secretary. Beforehand, we had the black lesbian from French Canada, and now we have this lady.
Shed any light for us on how the president perceives his use of public profanity, which is a practice that certainly sets him apart from all of his predecessors.
No, not really. Profanity? What? I don't know what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, LBJ. Boy, that guy was profane. Reagan wasn't profane. He never swore. Grant, he swore a lot. So a lot of presidents swore.
Does he regard it as an effective communications device part of his appeal, or is it something that he lapses into inadvertently, perhaps in times of frustration? And
I love, by the way, you notice how they're all dressed men in suit and ties. That's the White House press corps. They can't come in there looking like bums anymore.
later regrets.
I think one of the things that the American people love most about this president is that he often says what they are thinking, but sometimes lack the courage to say themselves. And I think yesterday at this podium, you heard President Trump express great frustration, perhaps even anger, with the previous administration's policies, many of which have led to the crises that our country is currently facing and that this president is focused on fixing.
Yeah, good answer. And I really like her. She's doing well. And she gave a good answer there. I don't have a problem. I sometimes swear too. And so I don't mean to, but some people do more than others. And I've never had it to a degree. I don't know what they're talking about because I've never seen a lot Trump, when he's talking to a big crowd, say really bad things. So I don't know. That doesn't really bother me. More of the results are what I want. And with Trump, you get who he is. He's a little bit of that. So she did a really good job there. It's good to see that. A couple other things that have happened. This is something that hopefully I can still do this on YouTube. Now YouTube would give you a strike for saying what the United States government is saying now. So let's listen.
I also would just like to point out that several years ago when I was working in this press shop and President Trump would take to this podium to brief the American people on COVID-19, he suggested that COVID very well may have came from a lab in Wuhan, China.
Makes sense because it was found right there, and how the Chinese reacted to it. I never had a doubt it was.
And many members in this very room mocked him for that, said he was spewing conspiracy theories. He was not. We now know that to be the confirmable truth. It took many years for it to come out, but the president was right in this instance again. Sure.
So this is the CIA. They have confirmed in their beliefs that it did come from the Wuhan lab. And she's right. At the time, it's considered a conspiracy theory and racist against the Chinese or something dumb like that. And platforms like YouTube will give you a strike for mentioning that. And it turns out it's true. And by the way, this is why you shouldn't censor political speech or scientific speech or about history, because you don't always have the right answers. We need to have a dialogue and learn. And this was an example. This is settled. This is settled science. It came from a bat in the Wuhan market. What market? Yeah, no, it didn't. It came from the lab. And the United States, YouTube, don't get mad at me. The United States government is saying that. And by the way, YouTube, are you going to send me an apology for that strike you gave me when I said this a couple of years ago? I don't think that's going to happen. So the United States government and the CIA, they looked into it and they're like, yep, you guys were right. That's where it came from. All right. Speaking of other hoaxes, we'll went off the COVID one. Now let's go into, that was a big hoax. Biggest hoax of the 21st century. Not the 20th century. There's some hoaxes. There is some doozies in the 20th century. I won't even get into that. But the USDA Agriculture Department employees have been ordered to delete pages discussing climate change across agency websites and documents climate change references for further review per political. Yeah, climate change is going the way of COVID. It's very similar to COVID in a lot of ways. Climate change started first in that it was based on a kernel of truth, right? Like COVID was a real thing. It's a real virus. It's probably mutated so much now. Probably still exists, but it's real weak now. That's how viruses work. They start out pretty deadly, but then after they replicate, they get pretty weak. And so probably still around, but no one cares anymore. But it was based on a kernel of truth. There was a leak from the Wuhan lab. They were doing experiments and they leaked a virus, and there was initial panic. There was a lot of hoaxes there. You remember they showed the Chinese just dropping dead on the streets. Well, those were videos of like Chinese guys being drunk. It had nothing to do with COVID, but they go, look at, they're dying. And we know that if you get COVID, you just don't drop dead on the street. But everyone got into panic. Remember, oh, look at the hospital overflowed in Italy. That turned out to be fake. And then all the hospitals overflowing turned out to be fake. Remember, they put the emergency ship Mercy to help with the overflow of hospitals in New York City. It's like, yeah, they didn't have anyone. It was all, so there was a kernel of truth there, but it was a lot of fakeness and hoaxness that because Trump, that was an election year and they wanted to damage Trump. And so a lot of things, there's a kernel of truth in it. A lot of these hoaxes, there is some truth to it, and I'm thinking of many of them, but then they exaggerate it for political effect. And that's the same thing with climate change. By the way, climate change is a rebranding of what they used to call global warming. And I'm old enough to remember in the 1970s when I was a kid, Leonard Nimoy, after Star Trek, he did some show. What was it called? In Search of or something. But they were talking about the ice age is returning, which it may be returning. It seems like every 10,000 years we go through an ice age. But it turned out to be bullshit. But then the 80s, 90s, they started the whole global warming thing. But then they rebranded it to climate change because then you got all your bases covered. If it gets hot, if it's hotter than normal, you can blame it on climate change. If it's cooler than normal, you can blame it on climate change. But the thing is, and it's one of my hobbies, I track weather every day. I put it into spreadsheets. I know it's a real dorky, but I like doing it. So all these years I have weather data, and it's never normal, right? It's never exactly average. A typical day is always above average or below average. That's how averages work. It's rare, very rare. It's like exactly on the average. So people don't understand that. So it's good for propaganda. So there is, and then the whole climate change is like, what time period? Of course, the climate has changed on Earth. Earth used to be a lot warmer when the dinosaurs were around. It was a very warm planet. Then it's really cooled off for the past million years. And we've gone through series of ice ages. It's nothing to do with man. And then even in more recent times, there's been hot periods and cold periods. So the climate does change. But the question is, do humans change it? And if they do, by how much? And it's allowed, though, this hysteria, because it's like COVID. They understand if they lie to people and get them scared, they can take away your rights. And we see this in Canada, which doesn't contribute at all to carbon or anything like that. But the socialist government under Trudeau is just killing the people up there with their carbon tax, which they're probably going to repeal. And Trudeau had to step down. But it's just crazy. So they took something as a kernel of truth, but they exaggerated it, like COVID and a lot of other things, in order to get political gain. And so thank God that Trump is pulling this away from that. So just to be clear, I do think climate change does happen, but it's not, you got to look at it as more nuance. And typically we don't do that anymore. Hey, I got another super chat. $10, Ryan, thank you. Bit off topic, but what are your thoughts about the idea that when the USSR fell, communism didn't die, but instead just moved to America? We become the very enemy we swore to fight since the 50s. Yeah, great question. Well, communism's a broad category, and there's kind of two types of communism originally that started. There was the revolutionary communism, and then there was cultural Marxism. And revolutionary communism was popular in the 50s and 60s in Central America and Africa. Viva la revolution! You'd have a coup and, that type of stuff and kill everyone. But then that type of communism overthrow didn't take hold in America. They tried. Remember the Weather Underground? And some of those people now were funding BLM. Goldenberg, she actually planted a bomb in the Capitol, but nevertheless, the Weather Underground, they were trying to violently overthrow the United States, but that was an epic fail. And so there was another route that went, which was cultural Marxism, which was trying to change the culture in order to get communists. Because what they looked at, they saw in Western countries in the United States, the conditions were good for a revolutionary overthrow of the country. And they asked themselves why. And they said, well, because they have too much like ethnic solidarity. They have a belief in Christianity. They have the family. So there was a plan starting with the Frankfurt School, which started in Germany. They were kicked out of Germany by Hitler. They came to Columbia University in New York City. And they started a idea of trying to subvert America long term by pushing things that are anti-family, like feminism, homosexuality, doing anti-white propaganda, getting into the media, Hollywood, to try to demoralize the population. It's a complex subject, but that's mostly what's been effective. And then after the fall of communism in '89, economic communism had been discredited. So we kind of, in the West, morphed into the cultural Marxism here. And we had this new neoliberalism. So even the Democrats, I mean, you still have some old holdovers like Bernie Sanders, but they're like from a different era. In the 60s and 70s, I can remember of a time, even in the Britain Labor, they were basically communists, meaning the government controls everything. But after the fall of communism, they kind of, no, we can still have corporations like Apple and so forth. We just need to make them woke and go after anti-white. So the nature of it changed. So you don't see much discussion anymore about fighting for the working man or getting good wages against the capitalist pigs. That used to be the rhetoric, right? They're all like capitalists now, but they all are into more of the cultural aspect of trying to eliminate Christianity and whiteness, stuff like that. So you're right, the strain we have is actually different than the strain that the Soviet Union had. And again, it's a long history because the Soviet Union almost had that wokeism in the early 20s under Trotsky, but it almost destroyed the society. And Stalin, he put an end to that and put an end to Trotsky too. And they implemented their economic form of communism, but they weren't really woke. It's not like the Soviet Union hated the Russian people because of the race. It's not like they promoted homosexuality. It's not like they did have feminism to a degree, but they didn't have the trans stuff. Really, the trans stuff started in Weimar, Germany in the 20s. And again, a lot of the people that pushed that ideology were kicked out by Hitler and they came to America. So we have a different strain of the virus than was in the Soviet Union. Great question, but it wasn't like we're just like the Soviet Union. There's some parallels, but it's a different ideology. I would argue our ideology is more deadly than theirs. At least they weren't trying to kill their people. They just had a stupid economic system, really stupid economic system. But you can change an economic system. If you eliminate the people, it's harder to change that, although Trump's trying to. Let's see. Agent 009, thank you. Hey, and Agent 009, he called in. Do funky dances have any effect on the rainfall or participation? Maybe you should research it and record your findings. Yeah, I did a funky dance because I said if Trump would win, I would do a funky dance, and it's up on Rumble. And if I have to say, it is a pretty good funky dance. Pretty damn good. I'm a pretty good damn dancer. And a lot of people don't think so, but I am. All right. But I should do that correlation, and thank you for that here. And if you guys want to call in, I posted the link. 009 called in. That was good. And I appreciate that. All right. A lot of great questions. Questions make the show interesting and fun, so I appreciate that. All right. So the climate change nonsense is going away. Let's see here. Oh, this is kind of a blast. I thought we're done doing this sort of nonsense, but here we go. They're trying to start up another racial hoax or something, I guess. This is so like 10 years ago. Oh, sorry about that. That's the wrong link. Let me get this. Here we go. They're trying to stir up a new racial hoax. All right, here we go. This is Philadelphia.
So under attack, what do we do?
A call for action and fight for change.
We will not be silenced.
Community members and leaders made their voices heard in front of Allentown City Hall Monday afternoon.
Just to think that people have to go to work in fear for their lives.
So this is something that supposedly there was a noose-like item she found on her desk at work. A black Allentown city employee. They're probably mostly all black at the place. And I guess she wants you to think there's a bunch of Ku Klux Klan members in Allentown, Pennsylvania that work for the city, which is black. And so they like to have this myth because it's important to their victimhood that there's this mysterious KKK that's threatening to lynch her at the office, I guess, is what she's trying to suggest. The FBI got called in to investigate, and she refuses to give FBI a DNA sample because probably she put the noose, and it's probably a badass, stupid noose there. So the likely scenario is she did this hoax for attention. This is typically all the way it is. Yeah, I don't know how people take this sort of thing seriously anymore. It is pretty dumb here. All right, and I got Ryan, all 12 of them out there. All 12 of them out there. Is that the 12 apostles or what? So, Ryan. Yeah, all the 12 of them out there. Thank you for that. But see, the reality is, and I think people, because they have more exposure to this, aren't buying this bullshit anymore. Because what white person would want to face, because if you did that, you'd face like 20 years in prison. So why would you want to put a noose-like object on this sassy black woman's desk? It doesn't make any sense. The cameras are everywhere. And again, she doesn't want to give up her DNA, so it's a hoax. She put it there. But probably. But the idea that some white guy, KKK member's doing this is like Jussie Smollett. But see, they want this, and you saw the blacks that are mostly older. They want this myth that the KKK still exists. It doesn't. Hasn't existed probably for 40 years now. But they want to go with it. And they want to have the myth that they're being terrorized by whites, when if you look at the interracial crime, it's the other way around by far. And anyone that's lived in the black area and white area, it's not whites that are terrorizing blacks, it's the other way around. But they like to try to maintain this myth. And this is what they're doing here. So it is pretty really crazy how they went there. All right. Let's see here. So let's go over some of the more stuff here. So thank you guys, all that. Let me just check my power chats, make sure I'm caught up. So let's see here. By the way, I think in a fake hate crime, you should get the same punishment as if it was real. So if a woman fakes a rape, she should be punished if it turns out she made a false accusation for like 10 years of prison. She should go just like the rapist would. And if you get 20 years for putting a noose on the black lady's desk, turns out she did it, she should go into prison for 20 years. That's how it should work. And I do believe that. But no one takes that stuff seriously anymore. No one's serious. Maybe some old boomer women do that aren't around them, but people have been around them. They know it's all fake. All right, let's see here. I got another one. Jay, Rams, is it true that the neocons were former Trotskyites? Yes, they were. Maybe not all of them, but a lot of them, like Bill Kristol. His parents were. He was a red diaper baby. He would say his parents were communists. They were Trotskyites. Again, Trotsky and those people, they were kicked out of the Soviet Union, and they got in academia in the United States, and that became our current strain of communism in the United States. And a lot of them in the 70s, they migrated from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party because they didn't like the Soviet Union and they were pro-Israel, and they saw that the Soviet Union was a threat to Israel. Originally, Israel, ironically, it was founded and helped founded by the Soviet Union, but then they got pissed off at Stalin, and then Stalin got mad at some of the Jews in his circle, and he purged them. And so they got some tensions there. And then Israel hated the Soviet Union. So then the neocons, who were primarily Jewish at the time, they went from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party. Not everyone that's a neocon now is Jewish. You got, Bolton and all the rest. But that was the origins of the neocons. And they still have power. I mean, that's why we got involved with this Ukraine mess. They're the ones, again, through the NGO, through your tax dollars, that did the color revolution in Ukraine that overthrew the president, which led to Zelensky being put in, which led to the civil war with Russia. And here we are. So they've been creating problems for a long time. And neocons need to be purged, just like Stalin purged them and Mustache Man purged them. We can't have neocons running around. It's just devastating to our country because they don't have interest. They don't really give a shit about the United States. They have no interest in that. Yes, but little history lesson. They used to be on they used to be the Democrats. Did you know that Jefferson Davis used to be a Democrat? No, not like that, but they were Democrats. So little trivia. All right. We'll do some foreign stuff here. And I've heard two different things. I heard these tariffs are coming in tomorrow, February 1st, but then I heard March 1st. Do you guys know which it is? I may have to ask Grok if I have to ask AI. Is it February 1st or March 1st? I think she says February 1st. Let's listen to this.
President in the Oval Office, and I can confirm that tomorrow, the February 1st deadline that President Trump put into place at a statement several weeks ago continues. The president will be implementing tomorrow a 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and a 10% tariff on China for the illegal fentanyl that they have sourced and allowed to distribute into our country, which has killed tens of millions of Americans. These are promises made and promises kept by the president.
The president yesterday said that last night he was planning to discuss whether an exemption would be made on oil imports. Do you have any information on what decision he made there, or will there be exemptions at all offered under this?
I don't have an update or readout for you on the exemptions, but those tariffs will be for public consumption in about 24 hours tomorrow, so you can read them then.
I do think that Canadian oil, the tariff is only 10%, and that's probably because Trump doesn't want the price of gas going up, at the pump. Yeah, tariffs. I'm going to ask Grok. Tariffs go in effect, because I thought I saw March 1st. But I'm gonna ask Grok. February 1st. So I'm gonna believe AI. AI's our God. So AI is saying tomorrow they go into effect. Okay, a couple of things about tariffs. There's a lot of things going on here with tariffs. Deeper than I think we realize. Because the whole tariff thing, Trump started with pretty simple. He just wanted Canada and Mexico to better protect their border. They both do a piss poor job at it. Because Canadians, they don't really care. Mexico, to be fair, they don't control the North anyway. The cartels do. But so it was a way for Trump to try to get them to help stop terrorists from coming over and drugs, specifically fentanyl, across the border. So everyone saw this was just kind of a negotiating ploy to, well, okay, so if Canada and Mexico, they spend more money on border security, there won't be a tariff. Typical negotiation. I thought that too. I really did. I thought, well, it's just negotiating. I'm smart. I mean, that can work. But then I started to listen to Trump more, and it's deeper than that. Trump also wants industry to come back to the United States. And if you put tariffs on, we've used tariffs since this country was founded. That's how you develop internal industry. What tariffs are just a tax on imported items. So if Canada's businesses are sending stuff in the United States, they have to pay the United States a tax, which I'll get back to in a bit too. But they pay a tax, and then so it makes foreign goods more expensive. So now if you buy something that's coming from Canada or from Mexico or China, it will be more expensive. However, if you build stuff in the United States, you don't get a tariff. So if you're a business, this encourages you to invest in the United States, build your factories here, hire Americans. I'm not going to get into the H-1B thing, but hire Americans, and that helps the community and all that. And I'm for tariffs, by the way, for that reason. It's a way to develop industry. But there's another aspect that Trump has recently started to think about, is tariffs. Traditionally, before we had an income tax in the United States, how did we fund the government, right? If there was no income tax, well, how did they fund the government? Well, primarily tariffs. Of course, the government was a lot smaller back then, but they funded it via tariffs. And Trump, he said this many times, like, why don't we get rid of the income tax and just fund the government via tariffs? So yeah, things coming from overseas will be more expensive, so prices will go up. But just think if you didn't have to pay taxes, how much more money you would have. Plus, this would boom business development in the United States. People build factories here instead of building factories across the border in Mexico, which happens, like Ford Motor Car Corporation. They build factories in Mexico. And ironically, I used to have Ford stock. I just sold it to buy a Subaru. But they build factories there because it's cheaper labor and they don't have the environmental regulations. Well, we're going to put a tariff on you, Ford. You better build them here in the United States. But if you don't want it, that's fine. You'll just pay a tax, and we're running low on money, right? We have a deficit, so that gets more revenue. So I think Trump is looking at tariffs as a way longer term. So even if Canada should fix their border in Mexico, I don't think that's enough. I think Trump is thinking bigger than that. I was talking to Olga last night. That's not her real name, but she's a Canadian friend of mine. She's visited here. She's Russian heritage, but she lives in Canada. And she's on a round table sometimes, by the way. So yeah, she's a really intelligent woman. Not going to dox her, but she said that she really believes, we talked last night, that if we keep these tariffs on long, another goal Trump may have is to try to get Canada to be part of the United States. Because she says living in Canada, they're already in horrible economic times because of Trudeau. Again, the green carbon tax, they've killed industry there. They've imported millions of Indians that are sucking on welfare, pushing Canadians out of jobs. There's a lot of racial problems now in Canada because of that. And Canadians are very unhappy. And this could break Canada. This could cause civil unrest in Canada and make people want to join the United States. Because Trump did say, hey, if you don't want a tariff, just join the United States. Just to be clear, I'm opposed to this. Now, Olga, she's for this. She would like to be part of the United States, and I understand that. Canada used to be a prosperous country, but now they have basically the income equivalent to Mississippi, our poorest state, yet their cost of living is equivalent to California, our most expensive state. They're really messed up there. They're in a bad situation. But if we got Canada, I don't want them, because immediately we would be perpetually a Democrat for president, because they would be the largest state and they're Democrats. They fucked up their bed up there. They should have to live in it. Maybe we can bring in as refugees some white Canadians and just leave the Indians and Chinese in Canada. But no, I don't want to take in Canada. But I think Trump does, and I don't think he's goofing around. And this could force the issue. So the tariffs could be a way to gain control of Canada. And, well, Trump says so. I mean, I think it's time we take him seriously. So anyway, that's starting tomorrow, the tariffs. Okay. Trump has been so busy this first couple of weeks here. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate this. It's always good to end the week with you guys. Trump says he will speak to Putin and think will perhaps do something significant. So there's already a lot of negotiations going on trying to end the war with Ukraine and Russia. And, you know, if Trump says he's going to do something, he's doing it. So hopefully that will happen. We're pissing away too much money in Ukraine. We can't afford it. We just got to get a settlement there. And I think a settlement is possible. The issue is Russia's winning despite the Ukrainian propaganda. Russia's winning. They're advancing. So they are kind of in the driver's seat. Why would they sign off on a... They're in no reason to sign off on a bad deal. However, despite the propaganda that Putin is the next Hitler and he wants to conquer the world and kill everyone that doesn't have blue eyes. Hitler. Yeah, Putin's Hitler. Everyone's Hitler. So Hitler's going to negotiate with Hitler because Trump's Hitler, Putin's Hitler, Hitler's everywhere. Putin doesn't want all of Ukraine. He never did. It's just how many of the eastern territories. And they will probably give those eastern territories, which are mineral rich, by the way, to Russia. In exchange, we'll ease up some sanctions. We'll get rid of Zelensky, maybe do a Seth Rich on him. And in exchange, Russia won't bitch about us taking Greenland. Something like that may come about. Jay, thank you. Alberta and Western provinces already want to join, and they are more conservative like us. Yeah, if Canada did come in, I don't think it should just be one state. Trump says the 51st state, but I think it's going to be more complicated than that. But again, this lady I talked to, Olga, she's really intelligent. You know, she's serious. She thinks this will break Canada. And Trudeau already says, oh, you got to be ready for difficult times because, you know, they put all the stupid carbon tax on. They imported millions of Indians. It used to be a safe country. Now it's shit. It's really sad what's happened in Canada. But I don't want to, as an American, I feel sorry for the Canadians, but I don't want to inherit their problems, you know. I don't want that. Maybe the Western provinces we could take. And I don't know. I don't want the provinces that have been overrun with diversity and shit libs. And then you have Quebec. And Quebec, they should probably be set free, but they can't survive on their own. I don't really give a shit anymore. I just think bringing in Canada would create some more problems than it's worth. I don't even want Greenland. Although Greenland wouldn't be as big as an issue. They only have 56,000 people. But again, that'd be some issues there. Everyone in Greenland is pretty much an Eskimo that's on welfare, and I don't think we need that. So, yeah. So, I'm not a big fan of that either, foreign. So, we'll see here. So, hopefully the Ukraine thing, we'll get some progress on that. And then we have potential fighting in Mexico. Although northern Mexico, this is technically Mexico, it really isn't. It's controlled by the cartels. And that's just reality of the situation. And Trump has said we're going to deal with them. Well,
drug cartels have been declared terrorist organizations. And if you find that, and we know if there's Al Qaeda, we're going to hit them. I don't care if you're in Somalia, Sudan, or in Syria. If we find that they continue to fire at our border control and they continue to put fentanyl into our country, as the Secretary of Defense, are you permitted now to go after them in Mexico or wherever they are?
Brian, I'm don't want to get ahead of the president, and I won't. That's ultimately going to be his decision. But let me be clear, all options will be on the table. If we're dealing with what are designated to be foreign terrorist organizations who are specifically targeting Americans on our border, and we're finally securing our border. We've been securing other people's border for a very long time. The military is shifting toward an understanding of homeland defense on our sovereign territorial border. That is something we will do and do robustly. So we're already
Yeah, so fighting the cartels, not really fighting Mexico. Again, Mexico doesn't control the North. They're scared of the cartels. And so we need to clear that situation up because Mexico doesn't have the ability or the wherewithal to deal with it. And it's a mess down there, and I don't want to take in Mexico. But we do probably need to straighten things up there because they are not likely to fix that. So look for some fighting and attacks on the cartels coming up, and maybe Panama. Trump, we're going to take Panama Canal. He's not joking. And to me, this wasn't a huge issue, but there's a couple of reasons for this. The big one, China. They're worried about Chinese getting a lot of influence over the Panama Canal. And he thinks that Panama is trying to gouge us. They keep raising the rates for ships to go through there. And Trump's argument is we built the canal. They didn't have the wherewithal or know-how to build it. Americans built it. I don't know if we could build it now with DEI, but back in the day we could. It was an amazing project what these white men were able to do, but they built it, and it was white men. That's who did it. And it may cause some, I don't, again, the Latin American population will be upset. I think Trump's like, yeah, fuck them. And that's kind of, I could see that. But like it or not, we're getting Panama Canal. And I think the negotiations with Putin are going to be a lot bigger than a lot of us, you guys may be thinking, or what I thought originally. It's not just going to be about Ukraine. It's going to encompass China. It's going to encompass Eastern Europe. It's going to encompass the Baltic states. It's going to encompass Greenland. It's going to encompass the Panama Canal. I think there's going to be an understanding of how we divide up the world coming up. Because Trump, like it or not, he is a big believer in that. Let's see here. I got another super chat. Thank you. Ryan, why the hell did Carter sell the canal? Well, he didn't really sell it. Technically, we sold it, but for $1, we gave it to Panama. Carter, that was the era in the 70s of, let's just try to be friends with these people, because there was a lot of, it was also, you have to understand, in the 70s, we were in a Cold War with the Soviet Union. And speaking of which, if you ever want to play an outstanding game, one of my favorite games ever about the Cold War, it's called Twilight Struggle. It's a 2-player game. It's a little complicated. It's not like Risk. It's a strategy game, but excellent game. You learn about the Cold War. But during the Cold War, it wasn't about fighting battles. It was about influence and coups and trying to get influence in countries. And we would gain influence, let's say, in Egypt and Israel. And that's part of our involvement with Israel, by the way. I know we like to think, it's just because of God's all-stars. But it also had to do, it was a relic of the Cold War, too, because it was a base that was anti-Soviet. And the Soviets, they had in the Middle East Syria, and then they had Iran a little bit. Originally, we had Iran because they had our oil under the ground. God put our oil under the ground, and they decided they were going to keep their oil. And we decided, time for Viva la Revolucion! Or they don't speak Spanish there or whatever. And we kicked out the leader of Iran, and we put our puppet in. And then that led to a Muslim uprising, and we got the Khomeini and all that happened. But Panama and Central America, South America, they were all proxies in this Cold War. Obviously, Cuba was in the Soviet sphere, but remember Nicaragua and a lot of these countries in Central and South America, they were very unstable and very corrupt. They're still corrupt and unstable, but we would send the CIA in there to try to meddle, and the Soviets would send their people in to meddle. And part of the issue was Panama, and we wanted to get on the good side of Panama to try to keep it out of the Soviet sphere. And so I think part of the reason was geopolitical reasons to keep Panama happy on our side. And Carter was kind of a weak guy. He wasn't strong like Trump, and he was just trying to be nice with everyone. And we were in the 70s trying to scale down from our empire building. Remember, we just got out of the Vietnam War. That was a disaster. And the idea was we should keep out of all this nonsense and be more humble and understand the Latino needs. After all, it's in their territory, blah, blah, blah. Trump wouldn't give a fuck about that. Trump is more of like a Andrew Jackson or Teddy Roosevelt. He sees a manifest destiny of America that one day, you know, I joke about it, but he could see one day we own the moon and we control Mars. And I don't think he's joking about that. And same with Panama Canal. So there were reasons at the time that it went to Panama. The big one was, well, you know, it's their territory, it's in their country. I know we built that, but Trump has taken that back, and I don't think he's bluffing about that. Just like he's not bluffing about Greenland, and he's not bluffing about Canada. Trump is taking this all, and you know, so when he says stuff like eliminating the income tax, I don't think he's just talking shit. He's actually thinking of using tariffs to eliminate the income tax. So it's going to be a crazy time, in many ways a good way, but we will see this. But part of these geopolitical divide up the world, he needs to talk with Russia and China and try to get, you know, what they're into. It could be, you know, he'll give Ukraine or most of Ukraine to Russia. He may signal he'll allow China to officially take Taiwan. Officially, it is part of China, but, you know, he'll allow that. In exchange, we get Greenland, Panama Canal. They don't object. Maybe Canada. So there's a big realignment happening in the world, and Trump is definitely driving it. He is not goofing around with that. So yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good for us. We have a community. We'll talk this. This is the thing. There's always a million things happening with Biden. It was all, you know, because he mostly slept and he didn't know what was happening. So this has been very pretty exciting there. Okay, let's end here. Let's end something on the old clip here instead of doing the cats one. I'm going to show, how old is it? Yeah, this is the old Miss America from, what is like the 50s. So look, I'm not sure what year this was, but take a look at this, how they answered this question.
Is a presidential election year. If a qualified woman were running for president, how would you feel about voting for her? And why?
If the men candidates running were qualified, I feel I would vote against her. My reasons being that women are very high-strung and emotional people. They aren't reliable enough when it comes to making a decision, a snap decision. I believe that a man in such a predicament would be able to make a more justifiable and better decision.
What, in your opinion, constitutes the ideal wife?
I imagine that the ideal wife depends entirely on the viewpoint of the husband.
Sociologists say that American women are usurping the place of the male in American life and have become too dominant. Do you agree or disagree, and why?
I do agree with that. I believe that there are far too many women in the working world. I can see many cases where this is a necessary arrangement, But I do feel that a woman's place is in the home with her husband and with her children.
So, wow, what a change. And so this was the way it used to be. Most of that I agree with it. Most of that I agree with. I think men in general make better decisions, especially in times of stress. I do think an ideal wife. You notice she didn't say sex or how pretty she is. It was working together well with a husband. And women have always worked, but at the same time, I think the current environment is bad, how we have that set up. So it was quite a change, how much we've changed. And again, you asked how this happened. This wasn't by accident. A lot of this came through Trotsky. We had a lot of great questions today through the cultural Marxism to subvert America, to try to make us weak. And it looks like we finally got a reaction to that. Let's hope that we can purge a lot of that element. The left is currently in disarray. Their policies are failures, not just in America. I think we're going to see this in the world. In Canada, even the left, they're probably going to get rid of the carbon tax. I think the whole LGBTQ thing is going by the wayside, especially the transgender thing. So it's going to be a wild time, but I think it's a good time. There's a lot of white pills here, and hopefully we'll get some sanity restored. I have a faith in our people, and we do have a spirit. We're good people. We tolerate a lot, but we tolerated actually too much. So hopefully we'll get realigned back to our purpose. Guys, I hope you have a great weekend. We'll be back Monday at 11 a.m. for the show, the RAMZPAUL Show. I'm sure a lot of stuff will happen this weekend. And thank you all, and God bless, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.